Welcome back to COIN, Rep Bynum.
Thank you.
It's good to see you again. We've been reading about you. You've been steadfast in opposing the Department of Homeland Security funding in view of the lawlessness and abuses of ICE. Tell us what's happening with the DHS funding and what the Democrats are hoping to accomplish.
Well, good evening, everyone. I am Janelle Bynum. I proudly represent Oregon's 5th Congressional District, and I got there because many of you knocked doors. You hassled our previous incumbent, and you made it very clear that you want a better Oregon and not taking us back in time like what this current administration is attempting to do. I'll start off with saying that we've been gathering a lot of information from our office through town halls. And so this year already, we've had 4 town halls. So in those town halls, I've been with Senator Merkley as well as 2 with Senator Wyden. And what I've been hearing, the number one thing I've been hearing, it used to be health care, and now it has shifted to impeach those bastards. And so whether it's Trump, whether it's Kristi Noem, whether it's Hegseth or Bondi, people are very dissatisfied with how they are running the departments, the treachery, the lack of humanity, the lack of real policy, and the destruction that they are all exercising over our country right now. So in terms of the budget and what we should be doing in terms of funding or not funding the Department of Homeland Security, one thing I wanted to point out to a lot of people, many of you are a little bit older than I am, but I had a baby in 2001. And I think 2001, 2002 was when DHS was started. And we started this in response to September 11th. It was a wartime response. We all gave up some of our privacy protections. We all were putting in for the good of the country. So this department has never really had these strong constitutional protections that our other departments were founded with. So I believe that it has not been run, as we see right now, centered on keeping Americans safe. It's been centered on maybe a bit of bravado, a bit of, protectionism, but not sound international policy, not sound national security policy, not sound law enforcement. So the argument right now is what to do with the department, how to fund it, and whether we should be funding it at the current level. The department right now has $75 billion, which I believe is more than the U.S. prison, the federal prison budget. It is enough to feed our children. It is enough to put our kids through college. It is enough to do a lot of things. And it also contributes to our national debt. So the question I believe that Congress should be asking is, what should we be doing with American money? This is your money, and this is my money, and this is our children's money. So that is the argument that we should be having in the halls of Congress. They sent us home without those arguments. They sent us home without closing out the issue on health care. They've sent us home leaving unfinished business. So we'll be back, I believe, on Monday, and we'll be ready to roll up our sleeves, but the work is undone.
Is there any movement or effort towards a compromise, given the fact that DHS is partly shut down right now?
No. No, they're not serious. There's no movement.
I wanted to ask you about these. We hear more and more about these terrible camps that are run by ICE and the fact they plan to expand them. And can the Democrats do anything to shut them down or keep more from opening?
Absolutely. So this came up at one of the town halls, like what can we do and what's the current situation? So the department is attempting to basically lease or buy warehouse space for humans. And in Oregon, in particular, there's a Newport site that was being looked at, but you can just, pick anywhere USA. So what has been happening is thanks to the real estate agents, realtors, brokers, chambers of commerce, they have been pressuring anyone that they find out might have a warehouse to lease or who has been approached by ICE. They've been strongly encouraging them not to enter into a lease agreement with them. So if you read the news, you'll see even some very conservative city mayors around the country have rejected having these in their community. And many of the small businesses that would be in these like industrial parks have said, I didn't sign a lease, thinking that I would be next to, where you want to warehouse humans. And I don't agree with this. And one city mayor said, we don't even have a grocery store. And you want to put a warehouse full of people here? Absolutely not. So keep your ears close to the ground. Like the neighborhood telephone tree is really important, not to spread rumors, but to keep informed about where they may be coming to town next. And what I say is don't let them take root here at all.
Other than the proposed camp in Newport, are you aware of any other proposed detention camps in Oregon?
No, about this time last year, time kind of escapes me, but there was a discussion of somewhere in the Deschutes County area. I have not heard of that resurfacing. But here's one really interesting thing to think about. On the one hand, we know that people are not getting access to legal advice, and they're far away from their families. And at one point, there were reports of people being moved a lot because every time you move, you kind of reset the clock. And those people who are making money off of these centers, it's a new body. And I think they're counting people as bodies. When they're announcing that people are coming in, they're like, oh, I have 2 bodies coming in. I have 3 bodies coming in. So I don't know of any more attempted to be located here. But it is, kind of a sensitive thing where you want to be able to find loved ones, but we also know that we don't want to continue this policy of warehousing humans.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And they're locking up a lot of people that they have a
Mhm.
status that allows them to be here, or they're going through a process legally to stay here. They're
Mhm.
locking up children. They're locking up people with medical issues that they can't take care of.
Yeah.
Um, has any of this been on the table to limit who goes into these detention facilities or who they can keep as part of the negotiations?
Yeah, so the Democrats put a series of demands on the table, including, how people are even apprehended. So, including masking. And again, they weren't serious. What is happening now, you'll know that the president responds to polls, he responds to how people like him, and these policies are quite unfavorable. So the masking, the kidnapping, the lack of access to humane facilities, the lack of access to legal resources. Today, I read said that someone was killed, a special education teacher was killed as a result of a high-speed chase in Georgia. So, in some ways, if you think of it, sometimes you can agree with the how, like we're a nation of laws. Let's leave it at that on that part. But we can agree on the what and disagree on the how. And I think the nation is showing signs that they are disagreeing on the how in mass, whether you're Democrat or Republican. I see the quick note about Shiloh Inns, and so here in Oregon. And again, it is important that we not let any of this take root here. So where you can find and sniff out information, we should. I would caution people though. There have been internet reports of people's passports being blocked. I can't confirm any of that, but this is also a terror campaign against people who are bystanders. And we can't let that behavior scare us, but we should be able to understand what the risks and tricks are that they're trying to put past the American people.
Thank you. I want to ask you about the SAVE Act.
Oof,
I know it's
the poll
passed.
tax.
Yeah, exactly. The Republicans have passed it in the House.
Mhm.
Can you comment on that and the status of it and whether you expect that to actually become law this year?
So the general premise is that people should have to show ID in order to vote. And again, this is a good case of you can agree on the what and disagree on the how. What they've done in many places is made it very difficult for people to get their vital records, and they've made it very difficult for people to just register and claim their rightful place in a voting line. And so in some places, a DMV may be an hour away from you. And to require everybody and not give it for no cost is a poll tax. What they've found so far is that red states have lower passport holders than blue states. And so this may be a case where it really backfires on Republicans, and I hope that it does. It amounts to a poll tax because you have to have your birth certificate. It also affects women, typically women. Some men change their name at marriage as well. But if your name isn't the same now as it was on your birth certificate, that places a disproportionate burden on women in particular. So, and then they've also, I believe, outlawed using student IDs, which the states, if you go to a state school, they issue that. They've outlawed, but I think you could use like a hunting license. So they're trying to skew it towards people who would vote for them rather than winning the case with the entire American electorate.
Do you expect, what do you expect to happen in the Senate with
I
this?
don't expect it to pass in the Senate.
Okay. What other concerns should we be aware of that could undermine the integrity of our midterms?
Well, what I've encouraged people to do is a number of things. Number one, if you have adult children in your household or in your life, make sure that they have a voting plan. There are a lot of apathy is one of the things that we're facing within the younger generations, and we need to engage them. We need to know what's on their mind, and we need them to be bought in to this democracy. So that's one thing. The second thing is I would train groups on how to watch the polls. So poll watching is a thing, and your clerk's office has instructions on what it takes to, watch the ballots be counted and collected. There's also making sure that no one takes root in intimidation around our ballot collection sites. And so I've encouraged people to think about May being our trial run. And so in Oregon, we think, oh, we don't really have a problem. We have ballot boxes. And we saw last cycle that, people attempted to bomb them. I think we had one in Washington, and I feel like we had one in Multnomah County, if I remember correctly. So that's a thing. Also, even the printing of ballots and the contractors that are contracted out to even make the ballots. So making sure those are right. So every step in our process, even though we vote by mail, it's also very important that we watch the polls and we guarantee integrity. And we make sure that it's safe and easy for people to drop off their ballots or even mail their ballots. That's where I think we should start.
I probably should have started with this question, but I wasn't sure of our time. This is your first term, and you've
Mm-hmm.
been serving on a number of housing, financial, and economic committees. Tell us
Mm-hmm.
about some of the work you've been able to do
Sure.
despite what's happening in our government.
So I would argue that congressmen should be able to walk and chew gum. And everybody knows Trump's not my guy. I don't believe in what this administration is doing or the way in which they're attempting to bilk us. But what is also important to me is what I would like to call our office is calling it our K through 30 plan. So traditionally, you think of K through 12. We've done it as a hybrid approach, and it's kindergarten through 12, and then age 18 through 30, because many of our young people are not launching easily. They're still having to stay at home. Either the rent is too high or the fees to get into a rental place are too high. The average age of a first-time home buyer now is between 38 and 40. We're also not seeing quality education. The quality of our children's education is, in my opinion, despite the best efforts of a highly qualified teaching force here in Oregon in particular, we're still not able to compete, for instance, with China. They're training all their kids on AI. We're still having to import engineers and scientists for a variety of reasons. But I would contend that we still have not tapped into the full potential of American students. So we've launched K through 30, which is focused on education, both for rural kids, urban kids. We're talking about mental health supports. We're talking about school buses. We're talking about teacher recruitment. We're also looking at how can we spur housing. So we have system development charges being waived and matched by the federal government along with state government to try to lower the cost of housing. And then we're looking at jobs and workforce development, for instance, growing the number of appraisers to get through the housing process, the purchase process faster, and people who can actually build homes. So our K through 30 is our signature agenda, and we are focused hardcore on making sure that Oregon kids can leave and they can come back home and there's a job waiting for them. They can support their family, and you're not having to fly halfway across the world to see your grandkids.
Thank you. I have a last question from our climate, energy, environment team.
Mm-hmm.
Will you commit to oppose the misnamed Fix Our Forests Act that we think is just another grift by Trump and his donors? It has many anti-democratic provisions, and we think it will destroy so many forest ecosystems forever with logging projects that lack scientific review, lack public disclosure and input, and lack judicial review, and still will not limit wildfire risk.
So, to be transparent, I think I voted yes the first time this came through, and there's been quite a bit of um, negotiation, I believe, and so I think it will come back. And it is really important for me to hear the specifics on why I should oppose something. And so invite groups to do that. We had some, I think, tribes weigh in positively on the bill, and then we also had activists weigh in negatively on the bill. Our office keeps count of the number of calls we get on every issue, every letter you write us. You should have received a response back. And so we take that community response very seriously, especially when it's not my area of expertise. So this is not my area of expertise. And so I take advice from my constituents.
Okay, and I think the question was prompted by your yes vote in the hope that we could convince you.
I'll just tell you, voting in Congress is not an exact science, and in many cases, you'll know that in the first couple of months of voting, Republicans were putting all kinds of crazy stuff in bills. And when I was in the legislature, you had to pick. You vote yes or no. There was no abstention. Now, I feel like I've gotten a lot smarter and a lot more discerning about when they're serious and when they're just not being serious. And so the ability to say, I see this, I'm a witness to this, but I'm not going to participate in the lightheartedness in which this bill is presented. And that has been a lot more freeing, especially given the fact that, they just weren't serious and they were doing everything that Trump asked them to do instead of being the check and balance that the American public expects us to be.
Thank you. I want to give you a chance to talk about your reelection campaign, and there was a question in the chat. What can we do to help you?
Sure. Well, thank you for the help that you all contributed in getting us across the finish line. I won with a 2.4% margin. I think it was about 49%. Lori DeReamer had 47% or so. And then there was 7% of a third and independent vote. And so that is the real challenge here in this district. This district does not necessarily follow the top of the ticket. I think Governor Kotek did not win a good portion of the district, if she won the district at all. So, so don't be complacent. That is a key there. We raised $7 million on my side, but the total campaign spending was $37.5 million. I believe money should come out of politics, and until it does, we still need to make sure that we can tell our story on our terms, and outside groups don't have an incentive to come in and shift our election away from Oregonians' goals to what their outside interests are. So we'll be launching the campaign officially in the next few weeks. I'll be turning in my filing statement in the next 1 week or so, and we have a campaign manager on board. We have a finance director on board. We have one staff member right now. We will be growing with an additional call time manager and finance team. And we will continue to do outreach in the area. So I'll continue to do my official side duties. So far, I've done 25 town halls. I don't think your previous representative did not do that. And so we'll continue on the official side being very engaged, but we'll also continue to be engaged in conversations like this one at your request.
Thank you. Thank you, Rep. Bynum, for joining us tonight. We really appreciate your
pleasure.
time.
All right. Take care.